Well, hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Now this time I will be reviewing the hit movie out of the 1990s, The Princess Bride. Now first thing I will say right off the hop is I love this movie. This is just a delightful movie. One of my favorites actually. So simple. It's actually like a really short movie. It's only like an hour and 20 minutes or something like really short like that. It sums everything up really quick. It's just a nice, fun, quick ride. It's just cool, like it was made in the 90s and there was all the technology available to have, like a heavy CGI world or all fancy special effects and all of that, but it's like they deliberately just toned down on that and they made sort of like it almost reminded me of like old adventure serials out of like the 40s or 50s or something like that, where it's like real sets but built on to like real backgrounds. There's not like, I don't think there's any CGI in this movie, but it's like a half set, like a half built set placed into a real environment, and it's like there's sort of a divide. Like it's kind of cool, like you can see where the fake set ends and the real landscape begins, and it sort of creates like this little interesting kind of divide. And and it's just like it just the story of it, it's a true love story. It's just a great, grand romance in that sense, and all the characters are fun and interesting. And it's the one thing that I could maybe say negative about this movie is well, they did, like, all the main characters are dressed really like you can really tell like they're in a fantasy setting. Like it's almost like they're dressed like 15th century or something like that. But some of the background people, I will say, like they did up the main people really well, and their costumes were really well done, and their costumes were good. But some of the background people, just like in the background, it was almost like they didn't, like they tried to make it look kind of authentic to the time, but they didn't really. It's like they just kind of took regular clothing and just kind of cut it up and added lengths to it and stuff like that to make it seem older than it actually is. But from a distance, it might even just look like regular clothes. There's a lot of shots like that, but again, it's not any of the main people. It's just like background people, right? But again, it's kind of like it's one of those movies, like you can see where like the movie making starts and ends and kind of a thing. Like I said, it's just like the sets and the costumes and that, like you can see where like where the real movie magic is mixed with just being live on a real location. And I just think that's cool, right? Like it really reminds you of old school filmmaking. It's like, back in the day when the technology wasn't so high, those flaws were there not because they wanted them really to be, or because it was deliberately set up that way, but because it was all they had to work with at the time. But in a certain way, it actually creates its own unique art form and creates its own kind of genre. And sometimes people prefer to watch those movies or just get in the mood to watch those kind of movies because they evoke a certain feeling and they bring us back to a certain time. And that in this movie was a more modern movie made that was just trying to capture that same emotion, that same like just trying, like carrying forward that old way of filmmaking kind of a thing. And I just think that's really cool. The dialogue is super swift. Like it's a very heavily dialogue-based movie, and some of the jokes and some of the puns and just some of the things said in this movie from all the characters are just really funny and really good and just like really swift. Like really just it's perfect, And again, about the locations, I mentioned this a lot, but the locations were beautiful. I don't know where they shot this movie at all. I'd imagine Britain or like something like that, I'd imagine. But wherever they filmed, it was beautiful. The green fields, the castles, just the whole landscape altogether was just really nice. I always celebrate, as I think I mentioned it in almost every movie review I've done that has real landscapes. I celebrate when filming is done on a real area instead of CGI. I mean, I don't have anything against CGI, it's not like or sets or anything like that. Like a lot of that stuff is beautiful and very useful. I'm definitely not, but I just really respect and love seeing a real background behind people when they're acting. It just adds a whole, like, even if you can get some flaws in it, you know what I mean, that is to do with it being outside or whatever, I'll accept that over just the authenticness of that. And yeah, and the score in this movie is awesome too. I love the score. You know, there's a really kind of charming score when it's in the romance scenes and stuff like that. That's awesome. And even just like some of the it has like almost like an arcade kind of like a video game kind of a soundtrack to it at certain times. Like the main character there, Wesley, when he's like leaves an area or is like discovers something new and is going off to do something else, it's like they play this like music that's almost like a 1990s, almost like a Mario kind of a like Smash Bros or something kind of a soundtrack, which is fun. Like it's cool, right? Like it's an interesting movie altogether. It was a new take on something old and just a different movie altogether. Rob Reiner, great film director. You know, one of the greats, put this movie together. Probably one of the most well-known and well-watched movies of his, I'd say, other than Stand By Me, maybe. Yeah, no, in coming up with a grade for this movie, I'm gonna give this one an A. Yeah, I'm gonna give The Princess Bride an A. Seriously, I do. I love the movie. Thank you very much for watching, everybody.